Hey everybody, you've got Marc Masci here on the Be Awesome show, and we've got our awesome guest here, Gary Fulvio. He's here to talk us about his amazing experience, which was a life-changing experience for him, and the importance of how you can heal yourself and heal your body and heal your mind. So over to you, Gary. Let's give us a bit of an intro.
Yeah, so I guess, all of these things come out of necessity. You don't go looking for them, but sometimes you're forced to find your own way. So what happened to me, my own personal journey was, look, I had a young family, just bought a house, just bought a business. I was, working around the clock, run down, you know, getting to the weekends, I would get to the point where I was feeling just sick all the time. So what happened was, I'd go to a party, say on a Sunday afternoon, barbecue or something like that, and I would need to go and lie down. I'd arrive at the person's house and I'd have to excuse myself, and I was like, "This is not normal. There's something wrong." And at that point, I noticed there was a lesion on the small of my back, and it had been there for actually a couple of years, and I just thought it was eczema, out of sight, out of mind. But it just got to a point where, working extra hours, stress of, new baby, new house, new, everything like overloaded. It's got another one, another one, another one. And before I knew it, it was all up and down my torso, my legs, my arms. And then looking back actually in the past, at photos from that time, my skin, my complexion was like almost a green. And I was like, wow, okay. So, I started hitting up the doctors, but they were not really giving me answers. They were kind of just biding their time and waiting to hit me with, you know, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, all this type of stuff. And I was like,
so at that point, did you have any suspicions as to what it might be? Did you,
look, I was just hoping it was psoriasis or something like that,
Yep.
And I just thought, I'm overworked, just need a holiday in the Caribbean.
As do we all, absolutely.
As do we all, right? But that, making that time when, I was a owner operator, like just a single person business, so I thought, I need to get these things done. I can't just take time off. I was just getting it off the ground, that sort of thing. And kind of started collapsing in a heap though. So I was like, okay, like I said, necessity just forced the issue. So, they were like, try this cream. That would make symptoms go away. But as soon as I stopped, it would, come back. And I was like, okay, so, like I said, so that wasn't giving me the answer that I wanted. I said, like, obviously my body's challenged. What do I need to do? So, I did my own research on what they were giving me. I was doing, they actually call it photochemotherapy, but it's essentially like really intense UV light treatment a few times a week. And that would actually, I'd feel like I'd be sunburnt afterwards. So I'd get home at 7 p.m. and need to go to sleep because my whole body, was like red, like I'd been to the beach,
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is not good. So I went to the dermatologist and said, look, I'm just a, layperson, but hey, these steroid creams that you're giving me, they're going to thin my skin. And also whatever you put on your skin, you absorb. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So,
totally.
and he's like, so I said, in the end, that's actually, even my body's already challenged. So I'm putting prescription drugs, which by definition are dangerous because otherwise it'd be over the counter. That's why they have to be prescribed by a licensed physician. Are going to make me sicker in the long term. And he agreed. I went, okay, I'm on the right path. And then I said, what about the phototherapy? That he goes, oh yeah, with that, I'll probably give you a different form of skin cancer. I said, okay, so what do you have for me? He goes, well, we'll just have to wait and it will hit you with the radio and the chemo. And I was like, okay, for me, that personally, that's not acceptable. So I'm going to do something else. And he sort of just said, well, good luck with that. I said, is there anything you can give me, diet, stress release, blah, 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 whatever, anything else? And he's like, no, because, they're not really licensed to give that advice, or that there's not going to be a study that comes out by some big, pharma company that says, hey, doing all these things will fix you up. But, the doctors will tell you stress will kill you. So the flip side of that is obviously do the relaxation, remove yourself from toxic relationships, work environments, toxins in your body, in your food chain, in your water, in your air, whatever you need to do, is the flip side of that. So by telling you that, they're telling you that as well. You just have to open your eyes to that.
Absolutely.
So that's what I did. So, that was a Kickstarter.
And at this point, Gaz, how many months were you into from your first diagnosis?
It was probably about a year. Like I said, they could put it into remission, but it kept coming back. But the initial onset of it was like really fast. It was quite scary because I thought, actually fast forward at this pace another few months and I'll have my entire body would be covered. Another thing that kind of gave me a hint was it was only the inside of my arms, so that didn't see the sun. Parts that and so my face was fine, and the outside of my arms was fine because I'd see the sun a lot. And I was like, okay, the sun in this case actually keeps this type of cancer in check, right? It's the opposite advice to what
Isn't
you
that
get from
interesting?
the Cancer Council,
Yeah.
right? And it's the same with sunscreens. I was like looking at sunscreens. Well, what's in sunscreens and all these things? And there's actually lots of articles on this sort of stuff as well. If you look, you'll find you absorb again. You're absorbing what you're putting on your skin, and you get putting all these petrochemical-based sunscreens on, and then baking them in as well. It makes no common sense. So the idea is moderation of everything, and try and be as natural as possible. So go out for a healthy amount of time. Ease into it at the start of the season, build a natural. This is I had to follow my own intuition because they couldn't give me the advice. So, I'm sure this will raise eyebrows, but, follow your own intuition. A healthy amount of sun. We've evolved in the sun. We've been in the sun for a million years or however long we've evolved over, right?
I totally agree, Gary, and I think that we can all only tell our own story, right, and our own experience. Right. And you've got first-hand experience in this, so you can just tell it from your perspective and how it is. So, right. The things that you're saying to me right now, they all resonate with me. Absolutely.
Yeah. So there was a few things that I did. Like I was also seeing an oncologist who would do, scans and blood tests and this sort of stuff, and I was really going there mostly for peace of mind, to check that, I was on track, because after somebody tells you you've got cancer, I was like, oh my God, I'm too young to die. Went into fear mode, threw myself on the bed for 3 days and went, young kids and, therefore I'm the sole breadwinner. What can we do? This is horrible. And then I realized that you can't live in fear because that shuts down your immune system. So I just went, well, I'm not going to let this define me. I'm not going to be that percentage. I'm going to do all the things that I can to put myself in the right half of the people that, get through these sort of things. So that's where I realized that there was a mental component, and I started doing all sorts of there was also a part of that I was going through some sort of marital issues. So I started doing, really went there to, like I said, help that. But in the end, realized that there's a lot more to it. So did all the sort of, release, let go work that I could, and there was a couple of things. There was fast EFT, which my ex-wife introduced me to. And there was also a program called Journeyman, which was part of the Journey process, which is Brandon Bayes from the States. If you don't know either one of those, I recommend you look them up.
And have they written a couple of books that anyone can go out there and research?
Yeah, Brandon Bayes has definitely written a book. I'm pretty sure it's just called The Journey, but if you just Google The Journey, you'll find a whole bunch of stuff on that. And Fast EFT is there's a guy called Robert Smith, also an American guy, who has lots of content online, and he's sort of got his own spin on traditional just EFT. But I think they've actually renamed it Eutaptics because the names are too similar, so you might find it under that name. But they bring in a whole sort of thing like NLP and all these other techniques to help people sort of actually go there, because quite often there's a resistance for many reasons. Like, for example, oh look, there's so many things to talk about.
Let's go deep.
Another
Let's go
protocol.
deep, mate. Yeah.
Yeah. There's, okay. There's a set of medicine that essentially is electromedicine, and it was rediscovered by some oncologists in the early 90s. And they actually, at the Einstein College of Medicine, can't remember the doctor's name. One's called Carly, I think Kaali or something like that. But it's basically they discovered that if you put some electrodes in a petri dish full of blood, it'll kill the patent state. It'll kill any known pathogen, including cancer, AIDS, virus, bacteria, fungus, you name it. That's a massive statement, right? That means throw everything else in the bin. You know, we've got a back door. You just imagine, right? You plug yourself into the wall, you'll electrocute yourself and die. Doesn't take much current to kill virus. So all you need is some gentle microcurrents, and they realized this. And this was, you know, like I said, early 90s. So this was 30 years old already. And I think they've known about this before. There's probably some other people that have come up with it, but that was the research I came across. And there was an engineer called Bob Beck. He was actually the guy who invented the brainwave readers, the EEG machines. He was a physicist and a medical researcher. He was, I think, just a genius all around. He used to do defense work, all sorts of stuff. So he, being an engineer, saw this come out in a medical journal and was like, oh my God, this is world changing. And this is where it gets deep. And this is another thing I had to wrap my head around. And, you know, your viewers will have to wrap their head around this. So he's like, oh, I'll write to the college and get a copy of the paper. And when he did, he got stonewalled. They just went, we don't know what you're talking about. But this was also mentioned at a big medical conference over in the States. So he kept getting stonewalled. Stonewalled, just couldn't get any info out of the university. And so what he did was he hired a PI, and he got a copy from one of the people that went to the conference and read about it, and then actually, being an engineer, said, oh, there's got to be a better way to do the electrodes in the blood from a petri dish. So that's in vitro. We want to do it in vivo so that we don't have to, because they were doing surgical implantation of the electrodes in people's wrists to get into the arteries.
Yeah, a little bit invasive.
So he's like, too invasive. So he's like, there's got to be a better way. So he found a way to basically induct it with some cotton swabs over the electrodes, a little battery operated unit. And that started working for him. So he started his trials in some hospitals actually, and then he was getting a lot of pushback from the pathology people, because they couldn't understand how, someone that was dying of AIDS 2 months ago is all of a sudden, or cancer or whatever, is all of a sudden they're like, oh, this can't be the right person's blood work, or all this sort of stuff. And so there was a lot of resistance, and also a lot of the people realized it was a massive political issue. So much money goes into all these cancer hospitals and drugs and that sort of stuff. And he's got something here that, essentially once it's built, it's almost free compared to the $500,000 a cancer patient, spends through the medical system on average, or whatever it is. It's a pretty big number. I'm sure it's growing.
Yeah. And is it something you can use by yourself in your own home?
It is, yeah. And actually it's not approved by any, like the FDA or the TGA here in Australia or anything like that. So this is a pretty controversial subject. But I decided to, seeing as it was backed by medical science, by some oncologists and, medical researchers and all this sort of stuff, was like, hang on, why is this not everywhere? And then realized that they don't want revolutionary change in anything, because it does disrupts too many, the status quo. Anyway, so, but having said that, if there's a company called SOTA, SOTA, they're a Canadian company who manufactures these devices, and they had a distributor here in Melbourne, which I won't name. And I went to see the guy, and I was the only one in the shop, and I couldn't, I told him what I wanted, and he still wasn't, he didn't go and get the items or anything, and he kind of walked in and out a few times, and I could see he was like tossing something up in his head. And after about 45 minutes, he goes, look, I can tell you're not from the TGA. I was like, yeah, I'm just, this is what I want. I've decided I'm going to try it. And he's like, okay, well, I'll tell you, I was stage 4 prostate cancer, and they told me I had a few weeks to live. Go get your affairs in order. There's nothing left to do. And he goes, I tried this, and here I am years later. So I finally had somebody that had, actual experience with this thing, that wasn't trying to push anything on me, and verified all of those you think sometimes fanciful claims you see on the internet. So that kind of, in a way, extra sold me, on the idea. So he handed it over. We had a small chat about, all sorts of ways you can, improve your health with high doses of vitamin C, all these type of other things that, we probably should be doing if you're unwell. So I went off and tried it, and within a week, I leapt out of bed. I could tell, and that's not me. Like normally, I like to sleep, 8-10 hours, and I leapt out of bed after 6 hours, and I just knew, just from the inside out, that it was working. So all the lesions just disappeared one after the other, and they never came back.
And how was the mindset shift at that point?
Yeah, so that was interesting. Like I said, I was amazed. So I was running around telling everybody about it. They're like, this is, I'm like, this is incredible. This will fix this. It'll fix that. Try it. I'll lend you the equipment. You don't have to even outlay anything. There's no side effects. The only side effects are you can detox too fast. So you've got to ease into it. But there's some supplementary stuff that you can do to help that. So I was on top of the moon, but at the same time, the underlying, there was that little, why isn't this everywhere? This should have been backed by some major companies a long time ago. So I had to do some mental work on that as well. So yeah, there's all these sort of layers to it. But then, like I said, so there was definitely that medicine type of stuff that I worked on. The mental thing's a huge issue. Just to work on all of your stuff. You think, you sometimes make these things, like I learned through the journey work, for example. You make unhealthy vows. You're like, I'm going to be the toughest guy ever. I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm going to get up every day at 6 a.m. I'm going to smash, the punching bag so hard and rah. And you can go like that for a while, but eventually, you realize it's can be a destructive behavior for you. So, you can, shut people out of your life. You can just write off family. You can do all sorts of things that actually aren't in your best interest. You'll hold on to that grudge or whatever it is, of that bully or whatever it was at school for 30 years, and you relive it in your head every day. You don't want that to be the front and center of your life. There's better things to focus your energy on. So there's all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think, a lot of people come up with superficial problems, and it's very hard to dig in and find what their underlying issue is. And I know that you've done a lot of deep work on that.
Yeah.
getting to the root of whatever those, those mental and psychological issues can be. So it'd be great for you to share that experience also.
I think actually for a lot of people, getting into it is the trick. Just getting started. I think a lot of people have, I guess, a fear of going there. That's what I was sort of saying before. Like even when I went to the journey stuff, it was men only. Yeah, I just had this energy, like, you know, it was kind of like not a stigma, like I don't know, like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. I was there because I knew there was something wrong with me, but I still had this energy, and I didn't share for like a few weeks, And then eventually I went, well, what am I doing? I'm wasting everybody's time. And then as soon as I decided to, I I just about like doubled up, you know, and it was a complete mess about something that happened when I was like 5 years old, and I was like, wow, is that number one? Is that number one on my list? um, so that was kind of mind blowing. It was funny, the physical response. This is how I realized there was also a definite tie there, because between the mind and the body, because it felt like I was being stabbed in the stomach. It's like I'm having a physical response to a memory that's locked in some cell in my body, set of cells in my body, right? And then after I did that release work, I had like a rush of heat, like heat through my body. I drank like a liter of water in half an hour. I had like a headache that came on and lasted for a couple of days. And I was like, okay. And then it went, and I felt amazing. And I went, okay, that was something. So I was like, well, if that is the stress that you want to carry through your life because you think you're too tough to go there, you're going about it the wrong way. So I was like, okay, what else is there? And so, you know, um, there's just so many things, so many layers. And then once you do get sort of past that, you can use those same tools to manifest the good stuff as well, right? It's kind of a never-ending story, and I guess that's why people like Brandon Bayes call it the journey, because you don't just do one session, you're fixed.
Yeah.
But definitely, you start the right path and you keep getting better and better. I think it's important to. I've been slack personally, actually, recently. I've realised, I've sort of got into a rut because I haven't been doing enough of it. So I sort of fell into that. It's easy to fall into that trap of, I'm done now, I'm fixed. Well, you keep improving and keep striving, I think. But it's just important to form a habit of just doing it.
So look, that's probably a great segue into, so once you've done that deep initial work and you've released a lot of those blocks from early in your life, and it could be as recently as a couple of years, or it could be when you're 5 years old. So do you have any tools that you use today still to continue to, I guess, allow yourself to not put those layers back on, so that you don't have to come in another 10 years and have those same blocks that you've just released yourself of? Is there any daily or weekly or monthly practices that you use?
I just sort of do it on an ad hoc basis. So sometimes I'll use the tapping, actually, that the fast EFT stuff.
Can you explain a little bit about that?
So I'm not actually a practitioner of this, although I was kind of qualified in the journey stuff for a while. There's levels of that, but that's been a few years now. So, but the tapping stuff is essentially you just go, this thing, whatever it is, it's really getting to me. You go to yourself, okay, so where is it? Where do you feel it in your body? You ask yourself all these questions as ways to sort of focus on it. So you'll say, okay, where do I feel it? I might feel it like, I feel it in my heart, or I feel it in my stomach, or all over, whatever it is. And you just go, okay, I'm focusing on it. And then you actually tap on your pressure points. I know this looks weird. Well, it does to me. I'm just going to
No, it definitely doesn't sound weird at all.
So there's some pressure points, and you tap on them, and you'll go through, like release and let go. It's safe to let go. This type of stuff. There's a whole sort of, not quite a script, but some sort of key words that you go through. and you just go, I'm safe to let it go. And you do some deep breathing. Yeah, you breathe and you let it go. And then you sit there and you go, okay, what's remaining? What's left? And even when you say, okay, I think I'm 90% there, you go, okay, so what's left in that 10%? So just different questions to sort of unravel that, all the
Yeah.
layers. But you can do that quite quickly. You don't have to do like a big half an hour session. You can just go, I'm just sitting here right now. This is really getting to me. Bang, bang, bang. And it's just like 1 minute and you're done and you're over it. But I found what's sort of interesting is that what's mostly changed is before I started doing all this work, I realized I'd been living essentially a reactionary sort of lifestyle where something would upset me, I'd fly off the handle or I'd bury it or whatever my reaction was to that upsetting situation. And then I would react without understanding. So you're actually inside the ego and you don't understand, it's driving you. And it's not necessarily the best place to be. So, I mean, obviously, it's very hard to separate your ego. Your ego is your sense of self, or whatever whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of philosophy and to read, around that whole thing. But now I've realised that since I've done that, I still sort of fall into it, but I see that I'm doing it straight away, and I go, okay, that you see yourself almost from a third person. You see that it's just a story. Oh, I'm triggered because of this. Okay, and then I'll, 5 minutes later, if I've had to say an argument with somebody, I'll man up and I'll go, actually, that was really uncalled for. I didn't mean that. I'm sorry. Whereas before, that would have been stuff that guy, um, write him off. I don't need that person in my life anymore. And it's a healthy release. So what happens is you are able to, and even if they've actually done you wrong, this was another major thing. I've realized that even if somebody has done you wrong, you can actually forgive them, but it's not to justify that it's okay for them to do that. It's so that you can let that story go and it doesn't drive the rest of your life. So it's like, okay, that's huge. So just being able to see from the outside, make those different decisions. Yeah, there's some stories that you could tell. Like on one day, you could go. I'll give you an example. One that I thought was amazing. I had a friend who I won't name, and we were actually at a session, one of these group sessions. We both had a road rage incident that day. He had chased this guy down the road for the next 5Ks, and they yelling at each other and all of this sort of stuff. Because he'd been cut off, and the guy did the wrong thing, right? Because there's road rules saying you need not to do that. Anyway, and I had been cut off that day too, but rather than jumping to, hey, stuff you fella, I just looked at him like with a neutral face, and I waited about a second. And this guy, you could see, was having a bad day, was ready to explode. But when he saw that I was just letting him be, he waved and said sorry. And I was like, 5 years ago, I would have been having that same, I'll chase that guy down the road and tell him what for, It's that it doesn't get you anywhere. So I was like, okay, getting back to that, stress will kill you. I was like, it's all these little 1%ers that add up over your life, make you healthier, in your head, in your body, and in relationships, and frees up space for better things.
Absolutely, that's a pretty amazing philosophy and way of life that you live now through that. Because you're absolutely right. It is those layers that you put on yourself on a daily basis that you don't allow yourself that room and that space to free yourself of that stuff. and let it
Yeah.
all go. And after weeks and months and years of all those layers building on top of you, you start to get those underlying issues manifesting in a physical format. Absolutely. And
Absolutely.
and case in
Yeah.
point with the road rage, you've got to look at scenarios like that in your life and think, well, how is this going to serve me? Am I,
That's right.
if
Right.
I'm flaring up like a raging bull and having a go at this
Yeah.
guy, how is that better serving me? It's not. You've just got to, like you said, be able to let it go and
Yeah.
move on from that situation, because it's not going to serve you or them at all, and you're going to
Yeah.
carry that negative energy to another situation also. So
Absolutely.
yeah, amazing stories, Gary. Amazing. So there's the daily practice that you still continue today, with the deep mind work, and is there anything that you do on the physical side of it at all to keep yourself in better shape today?
Yeah. So, like I said, I think I've recently got back on the bandwagon because I realised that I'd been too slack. So, I've sort of been through a period where I got complacent,
Yeah.
but I've recently started eating vegetarian again. So that was a part that I probably didn't mention before of the healing process. I was eating raw, vegan, organic food, which didn't appeal to me, but it came out of crisis. Um, and and since I've started that again, it's only been a couple of weeks actually since I've jumped back onto this. I've realised that I feel so much better already, and I haven't been super strict, but it was probably like it's probably like 90% of the food that I'm eating. So I don't feel like I'm missing out. If I want to have a tiny, tiny piece of chicken, or the once off something that doesn't fit, um, to that, I so I don't have that mental battle. But it's just really about you know eating right things majority of the time, because we're not robots, I guess. And I think also that, going back to my philosophy of a moderation of everything is probably good. When you go too extreme one way or the other. Uh, I tried keto with Chrissy, my partner, recently, because that's a good way to lose weight, and I just found it didn't work for me. It was like almost the opposite of what I did to get healthy to start with. So that just didn't fit my genetic makeup, or something like that. Um, so it's really just, I think what it boils down to is just following your intuition. You know, not everybody that you see on the internet that's spruiking some idea is the right thing for you. You need to just go, okay, I'm going to accept this. This works for me. I'm going to reject that, because it doesn't work for me. So there's a lot of that sort of stuff that's going on, but I really actually need to get back onto that day to day mental regime of doing meditation and that sort of stuff.
Just on that one, Gary. So that intuition, where does it
Yeah.
come from for you? Is that something that comes from your gut when you know something's right for you? Where does that intuition and where does that voice speak to you?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I guess from my gut. I read an interesting quote from, I can't remember the name of the politician. He's an Aussie politician, and but he was also, like I am, a first generation Australian. My parents were Italian, and so it wasn't unusual for me to come with a different perspective, because being a new Australian, um, you know, in the 50s, my parents were essentially in a time warp. They came from war-torn Italy and Europe, um, and came out here, and they probably didn't progress, like, because they were maybe more segregated from the rest of society. So sometimes you have a separate viewpoint, and that's okay. So I sort of came with that. I realized, oh, I've been doing that as well my whole life. So when you have traditional wisdom being put in front of you, like the doctors were saying, there's no evidence. My oncologist, for example, after seeing me for like 6 or 7 years, went, oh, Gary, he realized, he stopped, he was sort of talking to himself. He's like, hey, you look well. He's like, you sound well. He's like, you are well. And then he said, well, there is something to be said for, looking after yourself. Oh, but there's no medical, he's like having this conversation with himself. There's no medical evidence to back that up. And I was like, okay, you've just stumbled on the truth and quickly ignored it. I thought to myself, I didn't want to
Yeah.
have that, because I don't want to challenge him. I don't need to challenge him.
Yeah.
He's coming to his own discovery, maybe. So I was like, okay, so establish wisdom, but that's not the whole answer. Like if someone tells you you've got 3 weeks to live, let's try this, nuclear weapon, chemo, whatever, you'd probably do it. I was lucky that I had, a slower moving cancer. So I was like, okay, I can spend the time. I've tried what he said. They've got no answers for me. The answers they're giving me are making me sicker. So I need to follow my own path. So I was like, okay, it's okay to be outside the box, and you just do it. Look, we've had similar stories, even with my youngest son. They were saying he was going to be autistic, and he's not. I think what happened is a lot of people that are diagnosed with autism are actually the symptoms of autism caused by gut issues, basically. So he had leaky gut syndrome. So for people that don't know what that is in a nutshell, essentially, as you break down your food, it gets into small particles that will pass through your intestine wall into your bloodstream, and your body will take it where it needs it. And if those holes in your intestine wall are too large, they call that leaky gut. So what happens is some proteins, for example, that would get filtered out by that hole, they're able to pass through, and then they can create all sorts of havoc in your. They're like an opiate. Some of the so cow's milk proteins for him, for example, they're like an opiate to the brain. So it's almost like, even though he's only 2 years old, it's almost like he's on drugs. Can't sleep, become irritable, and all this type of stuff. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. So sourced some illegally sourced, again, you have to step outside the box, some raw goat's milk. So not homogenized or pasteurized. And that actually has an acid, caprylic acid, in there, which heals the gut. So the leaky gut. We took him off gluten. Taking him off dairy was the biggest change straight away. It was like night and day. Gluten as well. And then he healed his gut with all the support we could. We extracted heavy metals out of his system. Actually, a lot of people, was another thing actually I forgot to mention, because I've done so many things over the years that are outside the box. Did tests and found that I had, high mercury, high arsenic, high lead. And so a lot of people have this because, we've been around the industrial age. TVs, light globes, neon light globes that get smashed, have all these toxic chemicals that don't go away. They leach into everything, because people are like, oh, I eat healthy. Yeah, okay, cool, that's fine. But, all the brake dust, all the, have you ever been near I used to I smashed a thermometer when I was a child, played with the mercury, for example. because
and that stuff sits in your cells for a long time, right? Like forever.
Yeah, because that's right. It's very hard to excrete. But there are things you can do. So you can do some chelation therapy. So there are certain compounds that you can eat that basically that stuff will bind to, and then you'll excrete it. We did that for him. So essentially, we set him up for success, by fixing the problem rather than just going, well, the doctor was saying for our son, oh, you'll just have to wait until he's 5, and then we'll give you an actual diagnosis. But for now, we think he probably will be. And we did this for 6 months or so, and then took him back, and the doctor was just like, I can't believe this is the same child.
Incredible.
So, and that only started when he stopped breastfeeding. So I knew that it wasn't, he wasn't born like that. It was an environmental issue. What's happened? He's changed from breast milk to some cow's milk, formula, whatever. Okay, well, there's your answer, you know. And I've had this conversation with some people, even a friend whose son was, you know, heavily actually autistic, and you know, mentioned these things, and they tried it, and then had some success. But then the next time I saw them, it was basically the same situation, and I said, "What happened?" And she said, "Well, I went to the doctor and told of what, you know, I've done." And he goes, "Oh, that doesn't have any, you know, basis. That doesn't work. So just went back to the old ways." And I was like, "Wow, that really says something, you know, for the sway that, you know, the official story has on people, and not necessarily for their own, you know, better outcomes." So I it's not that I disregard all of that, you know, mainstream wisdom and science. Um, But I'm just saying, you know, there are things like the that people aren't going to do a study on because it just doesn't suit the money of the world, the money flows of the world. You know, they like to have their sort of set industries, you know, based on, you know, they're essentially people are customers at the end of the day, and they don't necessarily want to fix it, uh, because there's no money in saying, hey, if you just have some goat's milk, or if you get rid of the heavy metals out of your system, or we can't sell you anything. So it's a really challenging idea. So
Yeah,
again, you just have to
absolutely correct.
sometimes sit outside the box and go, I'm following my intuition here, um, and I think you'll do well.
And absolutely do your own research because it's, you know, it's ultimately in your,
Yeah,
it's for your benefit, right?
yeah.
And to challenge the status quo for sure.
So I've been labelled all sorts. You know, I've had friends that say, "Oh, it's all in your head. It's all placebo." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Placebo. That's fantastic." So you know what you're telling me is that the power of the mind, which is what I've just been telling you, is
And
can
that
help.
brings you somewhat into the magical realm then, if you could, that you're a healer, that you've healed
Yeah,
yourself. And isn't that a fantastic thing in itself if we all had the ability to
yeah,
believe that we can heal ourselves, and it happens.
yeah,
If that's as simple as it is, that's a beautiful thing in itself.
yeah, absolutely. And I think basically, so uh, you know, there's I guess there's processes, physical processes that happen as well. It's not just, you know, hocus pocus. Because what happens is, you know, you go into fight or flight, stress response, because you're scared of this label that you've been given. Oh, you've got cancer, you've got this, you've got that, you know. So that actually turns off your immune system. So how do you turn it back on? Actually, by doing letting go. Then you're not in fear, you're not in stress, you're not in fight or flight. And then your body goes, okay, now it's time that I can actually do that recovery mode. So your body puts resources with hormone, you know, sending certain hormones through your body, either for you know, I need to fight right now. Don't worry about healing that sore on your back because we've got bigger issues.
Yep.
Or, yep, I can relax. You're in a relax mode. Okay, cool. Now we can divert some energy to healing. And that was a huge. I know it probably sounds like common sense, right? But that's a huge. That should be a huge front and center thing, right? When you go, I'm just surprised, you know, like when you go to say a GP, they don't do all of this type of stuff. Like, okay, let's immediately get levels on everything. How are you feeling in yourself? Not just, oh, are you coughing? You know, what's the biggest problem in life? You know, there's heaps of studies on, you know, like socioeconomic levels and health outcomes for people, and that should tell you, because why? Because they're stressed about money. You know, they don't they can't afford to put the right things in their body. They've got to go for the cheapest item on the shelf. You know, all this type of stuff. They can't go on those big long holidays. So the answers are right there in front of your face. You just have to be ready to accept that and go, okay, it's not all just about a magic pill.
Yeah, and you have to want to look. You have to want to know the truth also, or find your truth,
Yeah,
whatever that may be. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
So Gary, if there was you know, there's so much, there's so many powerful pieces of amazing information in there that you've just got to, you know, and shared that beautiful story with you. So definitely thank you for that. That was really amazing. If you could sum up the top, I guess the handful of things that you did do, what, you know, and you could bullet point them, what would they be that,
Yeah,
you know, for your journey
yeah,
through this process?
yeah. So three things: uh, organic food,
Yeah.
um, clean water, fresh air, exercise. So all the sort of lifestyle things, and then for me, it was the electromedicine that I mentioned before, the Bob Beck protocol.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then third is work on all your emotional baggage, find a system, get support, and I think be ready to deep dive because that's how you get to the stuff that matters.
Yeah. And work on all of those in conjunction. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and what would be the one piece of advice you could give to everyone out there? Your one piece of life advice.
Hmm. I think you just need to listen to your intuition. I'm a big believer in that. That's the biggest thing because all of these other things flow from that. Um, for example, if you're tired, you should go to sleep. It's as simple as that. Your body is screaming out, go to bed. Now, if it's a Saturday afternoon and you really have to mow the lawn, well, what if that meant 20 years of 20 years of listening to your body, or 20 years of, hey, I could have just mowed it on Sunday. That's fine. You know. Um, so sometimes people like to line all their, just have that go 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 attitude, which can get you places, but just make sure that that's in line with where you're at. And if that's where you're at because you've got all that energy, that's fantastic, right? But just make sure you're not selling yourself short in the long term. That's all.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks so much, and again, thanks for sharing that beautiful story, Gary. And
no worries.
That's another one from us at the Be Awesome Show and the Masci Group. Thank you so much for listening.